Kipple Eyes.
Something's not right. I'm picking up a whole load of anomalies.
Released in 2017, Echo was created by the Denmark-based independent game developer Ultra, which has unfortunately closed down since, making Echo their lone release. Several individuals at the company shared work history at major game company IO Interactive, contributing their talents to the Hitman series of games in the early 2000s and mid-2010s. Echo is available on Windows and PlayStation 4. For $24.99. I think it's also worth mentioning, before I begin in earnest, that there was news some time ago of a film adaptation under development as well. Derek Kolstad, creator of the John Wick series, serving as writer, with F. Gary Gray as producer. Not many other details I could find, but in case it ever does come out, the premise here is fantastic, and I hope it's as good as this game deserves.
I need a suit.
I'm not going to find a better chance to establish the preceding lore of Echo than now, without a lot of scrambling between expository dialogues. So we'll begin with the world building. Much of the history is murky, speculated by characters distanced from it by millennia they can't confidently account for, but I'll give it a shot to fill in as many blanks as I can without going overboard. Long before the events of Echo, humanity experienced an era known as the Push. A time marked by unimaginable strides forward, particularly in the fields of technology and spacefaring. With progress came monumental stores of wealth for the most successful. Great houses were established, and many forged ever further ahead, expanding into the deep depths of the universe. Notoriously, the Push era was also known as the era of splintered humanity. And if you think about it the right way, this sounds like it could be some kind of Dune prequel.
Father!
It's not though, it's actually a lot cooler. With the Push came other side effects. Artificial intelligence transitioned into a state of early sentience, and in fear of the wrathful gods these AI might become left unchecked, humans capped their resources. This fear was ultimately deemed unfounded decades later, and AI was allowed to flourish unabated by human paranoia. In a period later dubbed the Pre-Requisition Rush, we can assume the exponential increase in reach began to take its toll not only on the planets industrialized and harvested for resources, but on humans themselves, stretched thin, disparate, and distant from one another. Extreme human constellations formed and brought with them worry for the future. The requisition and concept was likely intended to rein in humanity as a whole, ceasing the constant expansion and excessive pursuit of progress in favor of reconnection, sustainable balance, and dispersion of wealth for the benefit of the whole. For some, though, the riches were too sweet, their pride too great, and in the last surge of expansion, one particular noble house, desiring secrecy and separation, went recluse, beginning work on a monument to their glory and disappearing off the map, almost without a trace. An ambiguous span of time later, technological artifacts and records somehow found their way back to humanity, hinting at the existence of that place. The palace, final accomplishment of the recluse house, the last great trial, sought after by those who learned of it in pursuit of paradise and enlightenment. The flesh and the soul shall enter the palace, through separate doors. Only the strong of mind and body will again reunite as whole. The ultimate test of self, a great challenge for equally great rewards. This gargantuan construction would be entrusted to an AI system so advanced as to be akin to a machine god, not the Skynet flavor, thankfully, but one immensely powerful and built to maintain planet-wide operations. This AI deity would do so in reverent silence, Deus ex machina, on a planetary scale. Even amidst reversion to a simpler era, a particular corporate power would obtain aforementioned samples from the recluse house, and before long turn to a sort of religious zealotry in admiration of their prowess, in ambition to prove worthy to one day stand among them. Eternity in a shining place hidden among the stars, a utopia gated such that only the worthy, the strongest of wills, may ever reach it. The man behind this ideal is known to us only as Gramps, and his pursuit of the palace leads to the creation of the resourcefuls, selected followers refined through generations of gene manipulation and rigorous, deadly training. Hundreds of resourcefuls are sacrificed during their lifelong competition, to the supposed betterment of the few, thinning of the herd, all in pursuit of peak capability. Nothing short of perfection would suffice for the palace, and so the megalomaniac and his flock would seek it endlessly. That's my take on it, at least. For a wonderfully made interpretation of Echo's lore and overall story, YouTube user StallardD has a more succinct video I've linked in the description, which paints a pretty convincing picture of the palace and its creators. To see his project through to its conclusion, Gramps went deep freeze freak, conserving his aging body, only reviving shortly to monitor the progress of his resourcefuls. Somewhere in this process, our young protagonist N is born into the gardens, a walled-off facility separated from the outside world. She's also the one who provides us the cheeky Gramps nickname.
He went on about the wonders of the palace, but he had already lost me. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my veins. I wanted that. To fight for the here and now. I decided that I would do whatever it took to make that happen. So I went back with him, to follow the training, figuring I'd need it to get away. And I was good.
Anne is unmoved by these visions of grandeur. She craves the true human experience, in all its messiness, to the dystopic, eternal survival of the fittest testing grounds of the gardens. Anne resolves to one day escape, to see the world beyond, but undergoes the training, knowing she will need it to survive and evade the penalty for the taboo of desertion, death. As a resourceful, she holds great promise, such that Gramps calls her his prize. At age 15, she makes her move and succeeds in leaving the gardens behind her.
Not really what you'd call a running away from home excursion.
Not really, no.
7 years later, Foster, a man with no past, and his companion London, a 1,000-year-old rescue ship AI, are personally contracted to locate and return N to Gramps. Dug down in some corner of the world, gambling to get by, N is captured by Foster and brought back to the gardens.
None of our marks knew what hit them, and then we were gone. The stuff we pulled off, you wouldn't believe it.
I believe it. I was one of your jobs.
A thieving rich kid with a gambling problem hardly qualifies. I got the brief. Not much of an extraction, really. No one giving a shit about you where you dug down. Only challenge Foster could see was that your grandfather wanted you to willingly hand back whatever it was you stole from him.
But things don't go as planned for anyone involved. I'll spare those few critical details for later, but for now, just know that N survives, and Foster.
I saw it the day I came to you. The subject lies down on a marble surface with a strange silver pattern. And the silver unfolds, pierces the skin, and slithers inside. In about half an hour, it consumes everything. And all that remains is an empty slab of marble and a newly formed cube.
No.
He called it the translation.
Foster is translated, a process through which a Kaya supersymmetrical manifold is created, manufacturing a Mu chiral field captured in solid form, the cube. In non-techno jargon, there was a man here. He's cube now.
I didn't catch Foster's soul in a magical cube. He was dying, and I translated him.
You killed him.
With the cube in her arms, and coordinates taken from Gramps' record of the palace, En escapes the garden again, boarding London's ship and leaving Earth for the last time.
I feel like shit.
Echo begins as En awakens from stasis after a century-long haul, London informing her coldly that the life she knew is long past. With home a distant memory, the two at last reach their destination, the fabled, uncharted planet marked by Gramps' coordinates. En and London barely know one another, but the latter has spent 100 years contemplating the death of his partner, and En's possession of his lighter, understood as a sign from Foster for London to trust her, like it or not. En's mission? To resurrect Foster from his translated state, though uncertain of how, and is confident the palace will hold the answer she seeks. What follows is a deep dive, one into the self, and hundreds of kilometers down toward the core of the palace's functionally infinite superstructure. Previously, when covering Overwhelm, I drew comparison to James Cameron's film Aliens in its oppressive atmosphere, imposing color palette, and tense action, all working together to simulate stress and madness amidst hostile alien territory. Looking at Echo under the same lens, I see the titular planet Solaris from Andrei Tarkovsky's adaptation of the Stanislaw Lem novel. I see the mathematical death trap of Vincenzo Natali's cube. I see the imposing industrial strata and ever-expanding artificial labyrinth of Tsutomu Nihei's manga series, Blame.
En, be careful.
You're beginning to like me, are you?
Echo is immediately captivating during its opening hour, with heavy narrative focus and character building. I've gone through the sequence 3 times, and I still find it mesmerizing as En descends across exterior buttresses and unstable walkways, passing the shambles of warped and compacted metal, striated outcroppings of indeterminate purpose. It's a slow boil of exploration and discovery, all leading up to the critical moment of activation. Interspersed through the descent, a contemptful back and forth develops between En and London. Begrudging allies at best, they clash resolute hope with smug realism over Foster's fate.
But I can fix this. I can bring him back.
I think you're in for a disappointment. Nothing suggests any sentience. No interface to access the thing, nor any reason to do so. There's nothing in there. It's just a pretty cube.
Here's one of Echo's great strengths. Rose Leslie and Nick Bolton, each bringing extensive acting careers to the fore, characterize En and London with film-worthy performances.
Yeah, I saw how he did the corporation-turned-religion to get his followers to do his dirty work, and when the tides changed, the neo-innocence rubbish, protected behind his walls, watching the fury wash over his followers. It was slaughter.
Could you stop bickering for a moment? I need to find another way back in there.
You're so sure of yourself, En.
We're looking for a palace.
Why am I not surprised?
Give it a rest, will you?
En's mix of resourceful upbringing against a strong yearning for freedom grants her a collected, confident tone amidst resolute optimism and faith. London's status as sentient spacefaring AI brings history and perspective and age. His tired, accusatory told-you-so pessimism is the product of a calculated computer mind, yet still his voice is tinged with emotion, anger over Foster's death.
I don't know what went wrong that night, why Foster died, but I'm sure you don't understand much of it either.
Sorry, I didn't mean to threaten your romance.
Any blockade in N's path becomes grounds to belittle and taunt her fairy tale imaginings that she can make sense of this dead place, only to be quietly stumped when her hunches repeatedly prove correct.
You were right about the palace. What's the plan now?
We get Foster back, and then we leave.
I was hoping for something more specific. How I hope the scepter will magically make it open.
It will work.
Must be nice always feeling that the world will act in your favor. Well, this time it didn't pan out. Look at you now.
You think I'm giving up?
Also, you might recognize Leslie from the early seasons of Game of Thrones, playing Ygritte of the Free Folk.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
After minutes of descent, deep enough to blot out most light from above, N reaches a sort of landing dock and takes its entryway, taking her first gaze into the dark, silent opulence of the palace's preserved interior. Every impression whispers cold lifelessness, untouched by mortal hands, but carefully vacuum-sealed in anticipation of its first visitor. Not too far into the palace, N discovers a great chamber, and in its center, a marble slab similar to the one she used on Foster. After N attempts to interface Foster's cube with a close-by pedestal of light, an energy fluctuation triggers a major system malfunction and blackout. The sound of mechanical pistons pound distantly, as if a heartbeat pulsing back to life. N wakes up, the cube unchanged but the pedestal shattered. The entire structure begins to shimmer with life and light.
This is bad, N. The palace system's shut down, but it's still charging. The jewel mass is nearing the Dirac charge limit.
A second blackout stabilizes the halls into full, pristine light.
I couldn't move.
After several more blackouts, aspects of the palace change. Large urns fill with flowers. Artifacts from N's own memory slowly begin to line every room and corridor, as though this place has tailored itself specifically for her. Grapes are laid out for passing guests.
Best thing I ever had.
Most concerning are strange stains which begin appearing on the floor, standing out amid the spotless surroundings. With each blackout, the stains form into stems and nerves, reach out further, writhe and grow. Humanoid shapes crawl and pull themselves shakily off the floor, only to fall on poor, undeveloped balance. These creatures...
What is this?
That's you, N.
But why would it build copies of me?
Doppelgangers with malicious intent.
It jumped.
In Overwhelmed's closing moments, spoilers if you haven't played the game or watched my previous review, 3, 2, 1, okay, spoilers now. A shape-shifting hive mind assumed a human form in a last bid to gain the upper hand, acknowledging the night as the apex predator. In Echo, the palace plays out the fearful evolution of being our own worst enemy as its core gameplay tenet. This is its challenge, a battle against the self, or rather, selves. N's copies begin mildly, zombie-like in their clumsy shuffle-step pursuit of her. What I appreciate about this is that every piece of gameplay is contextually grounded and reflected by its narrative. The slow gestation of the echoes, and their acclimation to N's form, and incomplete amateur mimicry in these early levels gives players the opportunity to first learn of their own capabilities, all while hinting that the copies are attempting to keep up. Fire your pistol at them, and they will uselessly level their own pistols at you in the next cycle, understanding the symbol and its threat, but unsure of how to operate it. The voice work continues to shine as the true game begins, with N and London working alongside the player to contextualize this sudden, alien turn of events.
They don't mind the water anymore.
They're getting more capable after every blackout.
I think there's more to it. I have a weird feeling that the palace is registering my moves with those icy holographs, then using the information to improve the abilities of those things.
A little far between the dots there, En.
I just feel like there's some strange rhythm to it. A warped set of rules.
You are definitely disposed to find meaning where there is none.
They do what I do. They learn from me. I'm certain of it. They can't cross the water, but after I've done it and a blackout has evolved them, they do it without hesitation. And you saw how they were trapped behind the doors, pacing to get to me, and after I opened a few and a blackout, it was second nature to them.
The palace is seen as much a game to En as it is to the player, albeit one with deadly consequences should she fail.
That means the echoes are not coming, right?
You sound like naming them explains everything.
Back then, we all thought the passage meant the final test. The big one this time. Being a resourceful is constant competition, always performing to the best of your ability. But for one to win, others must lose. And losing often meant a life ending.
All that wasted on some sick game.
A game that will bring Foster back. I just need to beat it.
We've seen nothing here that proves Foster can come back.
We find the dystopian nature of resourceful society to be consistent with what we've experienced thus far. These exact elements and their presence here are too perfect. Remember the flowers? The gold rings which En immediately recognizes.
We had rings exactly like them in the gardens.
It does seem a bit much, even if you are filthy rich.
The rings were not for show. They are part of our training.
Oh, and you do what exactly? Step inside and feel wealthy?
Not quite.
These terrible man cages as well.
This place is horrible. How could anyone enjoy themselves surrounded by man cages?
Devices that can only imply torture or punishment for resourcefuls, which disgust and terrify En. She remembers them, whether a figment made real by the palace somehow processing her mind in that first malfunction, or a direct import from the recluse house's artifacts, scavenged and proudly displayed in the gardens and utilized by Gramps to prepare his followers for their eventual final test of worthiness. The echoes are just the tip of the iceberg in this place. In reality, everything we experience firsthand here is an echo of En's preparation for this precise moment. It's my belief that if Echo took place in the gardens, the gameplay may even be fairly similar, if more typical of your average stealth game, with other resourcefuls filling the role of En's echoes. What makes the palace significant is that it is alive, and it is watching En's every move. Alive in the Silent Hill introspective sort of way, or to recall an earlier comparison, the planet Solaris, constructing entities from memories, mirroring everything she was fated to endure from birth, despite her attempts to escape it.
So our lives were desperately dedicated to qualify. Pinpoint perspective on the great reward. Only, I never wanted to go. Those words alone could mean death. So when I ran, I knew it meant never stopping to catch my breath. If I wanted to live. And so it was. Yet here I am.
Foster's fate spurs her to dive headlong into the narrative that Gramps proposed to the resourcefuls, but her purpose for being here is different from theirs, and more pure. Gramps' mission was a selfish gate-crashing into what he anticipated as the equivalent of godhood. For En, her wish is one of repentance, a selfless act to fix what went wrong. Her echoes, a manifestation of guilt and self-persecution. En's agency is refreshing, keeping up and occasionally surpassing the player's natural observation of the echoes in the early chapters, hinting at gaps in the system. I distinctly remember my first playthrough, realizing through En's explanation that the dark phase before each blackout is a free period, where the icy ghosts which signify the palace processing a key action don't appear.
When the lights are on, The palace keeps track of my actions, registering what I do with those icy ghosts. After some time, it will reboot to update the copies. That's what's causing the blackouts. I get no ghosts when the lights are out. So my guess is that the palace is blind while it's rebooting. When the lights come back on, their abilities match my actions from the previous light cycle. But that would explain why they wouldn't cross the water up there. I didn't touch any water in the light cycle before I reached them.
They echo your behavior.
Yes, echoes. That's exactly what they are.
A blind spot, then. Sprint, shoot, do what it takes to survive. The dark phase is a window of opportunity for the clever, and your quick chance to go action hero before reeling yourself back in for the next cycle. Additionally, there are minor actions your mimics will not learn, such as your basic shove, which will knock over an echo for a short time, spending some stamina, but a great utility to get out of tricky situations without teaching your pursuers more deadly tricks you don't want them to have later. Don't underestimate the classic ledge push. Spend one push to line up an echo with a railing, with a second to push them to their fateful meeting with gravity. Feels like a Hitman accident. Speaking of, it's not difficult to sense the blood of Hitman flowing in the veins of Echo. As mentioned, Ultra Ultra's team was largely composed of ex-IO Interactive folks, artist and game director Martin Emborg. I'm sorry if I mispronounced this. Writer and producer Christel Cecily Grabeck. I'm sorry. Gameplay and level designer Morten Hedegren. In fact, IOI or not, everyone on this team deserves incredible props for contributing to a game that is able to tend with AAA production quality with a core team of just around 10 people. You know what? Let me run down the whole list, because you all deserve recognition. Programmers Robin Malm and Vincent Baden for making the heart of the palace tick with life. Animator Mads Herman Johansson for surprisingly smooth motion that makes gameplay feel sleek and responsive. Artists Soren Besch and Jock Hagstrom for assisting in building a vision of a distinct sci-fi world and rendering it in opulent beauty. Finally, Jark Niemann, again I'm sorry about the pronunciations, and Simon Holm List for great dynamic scoring of gameplay's ebb and flow and strong environmental depth. Everything from the creaking exteriors to the zooming crackle of discharging gunshots in the most dire moments of gameplay. And one more hurrah for Rose Leslie and Nick Bolton, who filled the narrative with nuance and life juxtaposed against the sterile silence of the palace. You all rock.
Heck yeah.
All the elements of stealth, distraction, and improvised weaponry are equally important to both Hitman and Echo. Where Hitman banks on the stifled glee of a humorless assassin blending in plain sight via ever more ridiculous methods, Echo chooses starkly minimalistic, labyrinthine trial chambers, occupied only by copies who loyally play by your rules, forcing your hand in equal measure to which you force theirs. If Hitman's beauty is in its complex environments and freestyle assassination, Echo's is in the learning and unlearning of the palace, as cycles periodically reallocate the stakes of the playfield. So the enemy can learn a few tricks. How bad could it really be? Well, I've prepared a quick demonstration for you. During some of the first chambers where our copies reached their full learning capacity, I decided to play sloppily. I sprinted with abandon. I needlessly shot echoes and generally tried to behave like I was some kind of wigged-out space marine riding a hostile popping power trip. During the next cycle, I got myself caught by one echo, and retribution quickly followed. I survived by the skin of my teeth, literally frames away from death, saved in sheer degrees by a cycle reset and some very lucky serpentine dodges. This is Echo's rule of restraint in action.
They're getting more capable after every blackout.
Your abilities are powerful, and is more than capable to get out of most pinches gracefully, but if you are careless and unobservant to the powers you've given to the Echoes, they will mercilessly overwhelm you by way of your own overextension. It punishes the power trip, but allows critical thinking and patience to succeed. To the benefit of those who want to play with their toys, though, the aforementioned dark phases give you that opportunity for exciting, momentum-filled displays of heroics, as long as you've got the power cell charges for it. Playing recklessly isn't the only way to lose. Even choosing to engage with the tools you find in the environment, you may find yourself on the receiving end of some of your own tricks. This is a more subtle case of your actions coming back to bite you. Though I didn't experience it for any of the footage I captured for this essay, and maybe I'm manufacturing the memory, I swear on one very rare occasion, I was snuck up on and promptly stealth killed by a sneaking doppelganger. They do creep around if you spend too much time doing it yourself, so I don't doubt the possibility their own stealth kill function might be in there. It's a very different type of jump scare. Just to clarify, I mean sick in like the, whoa, chess is sick gnarly, dude. Echo is the video games of chess. I think I said that wrong. Look at this refined architecture. The tiled floors, black and white marble, deep royal greens and purples and gilded golds, infinite wealth and excess. Echo feels like an ongoing, futuristic game of human chess hosted by the richest jerk in the galaxy. But he put grapes out, so we're playing along with it. Hey, those are my grapes. Maybe more specifically, Echo is a chess problem. In Sam Zucchi's Public Books article, he compares Echo as such. The experience of playing Echo, then, is not dissimilar to the experience of a chess problem. The other side of the board has no real agency outside the solver. Both black and white are in the hand of a single player, but the point is not to place black in checkmate and win the game. The point is to play both sides according to an overarching aesthetic design. The point is to make it art. Echo is played differently than any other stealth game I've ever played, differently than any other game I've played. It stands alone in my memory, monumental in its vision, tragic in its underappreciation, and the unfortunate closure of Ultra Ultra after this single release. Zucchi perfectly articulated what is beautiful about Echo. The palace and its guardians are more than a mere shadow of your movements. You are the composer, and they are your orchestra. Admittedly a murdery bunch, if you let them get out of hand. I don't know if that holds true of normal orchestras, but by its very nature, Echo puts you at the helm, and simply through the interaction of pursuit and evasion allows you to create elaborate narrative tension as you weave through its endless extravagance. Every choice should be composed, measured, and calculated, anticipating its equivalent reaction in the next bar of music. In its best moments, playing Echo does feel like making art, equal measures of pursuing big-picture goals with the flexibility to switch gears on the fly to handle unexpected factors. It's not all a fight for your life, though. In quieter moments, you may find more novel ways to utilize your relationship with your echoes. Play the piano, or the harp. Ring one of these tuning forks. Grab a key scepter. Eat some grapes. Hey, bud, hands off my grapes. I love these features. Not only do they add an odd compulsion for your enemies to perform needless, silly actions that distract them from their strict patrols, it's a welcome touch of detail and a source of occasional levity in what can sometimes feel like a sterile-by-design world. The mechanical subtleties go even further. These battery cell pedestals, called suns, will explode if shot, meaning with some ingenuity, you can blast several enemies at once with the old red barrel trick. But hold on, I've lost the plot here. I started this essay wanting to sell you on my deep admiration for Echo's quality. For months, I've just wanted to express my love for this thoughtful, slightly sad game that has haunted me since first playing it in 2017. Desperate to share it, to talk to friends about it, it hangs in my mind as the special thing that I'm not sure got the fair shake it deserved. Slept on amidst what inarguably was a legendary year for games, no matter your taste. Colorful adventures like Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, the sweeping worlds and stories of Horizon Zero Dawn and Nier Automata, direct competition via sci-fi and horror games like Prey and Resident Evil 7. I'll give it a rest, but there was a whopping list of big games dropped in 2017. No wonder Echo was overlooked. I think it's fair to guess the majority of us are still trying to catch up with the must-plays from that year now, in 2021. I only caught up on Breath of the Wild a few months ago. I loved it. It's no wonder poor Echo slipped by then. Even months after its release, who was talking about it? I can't find many. A few odd articles and generally favorable reviews, a quiet subreddit, a few Let's Plays dot the internet. Really, Echo's Steam review section may be the most densely populated place to find impressions on the game, and in these scarce places I finally believe this game stood out to others, at least a little bit. People liked it, but maybe just not enough people. It's more likely in my experience for a friend to remember their childhood experiences playing Echo the Dolphin. Echo the Dolphin. Ultimately, a lot of the research I did for this video had to come straight from the source. Big special thanks to my bud Sully for being the rare friend who played it back when it released and helped me to walk through deciphering some of the tougher points on this video. Yet, I'm here falling back on talking about explosive barrels as a mechanical subtlety.
Cute.
What am I doing? This game stands on its own merit, greater than the sum of its sci-fi story or its stealth gameplay. It changes the way you think strategically about conflict. And, yeah, it has some explosive barrels too, if you're into that. Let's try again. In the general consensus, even among those who enjoyed Echo, one repeating note of the experience is repetition. The very nature of the palace's cycles are a regular fixture of the game's pace, a stop-and-go system that peaks with a blackout to reset the playfield, whether to your advantage or the Echo's. It can feel jarring. It's supposed to. The cycles are as much enemy as ally, relieving you of a tense pursuit as often as arming the Echo's to come after you harder next time around. Echo's whole world is built on reusable assets. Very few monotaskers in this game. Set dressings are changed to suit the mood, but you'll be looking at this French Baroque-era, excessively decadent, Palace of Versailles-looking architecture constantly. Your own character model accounts for every enemy you'll encounter in the game. There's only so many surprises beyond that point, really. If I can add a small consideration, though, the repetition, whether you feel for better or worse, is by design. Echo, even in name, is a game about repeating. Its rooms and doppelgangers, your objective types, the visual aesthetic of infinite banquet tables extending into the far distance, artifacts from ends past, training within the gardens, it's all set on loop, always growing more complicated, yet at its core still the same game of cat and mouse, life and death, great challenge for equally great rewards. In further consideration, is N not herself a sort of Echo, struggling to escape the bonds of her predetermined fate? The latest landmark in Gramps' experiment to breed the perfect, worthy candidates for the palace, expendable iterations, gradually improving over great spans of time.
Well, the reality of my fairy tale upbringing was that it was all about this place. No, even before that, my genes. Graham spent centuries creating his resourcefuls, carefully picking potential from the gene pool. We were created to come here, and this feels very real to me.
So sorry.
N just wants to live, but the irony of Foster's death, her key to freedom and life unrestrained, is that it affects her deeply enough to lead her here anyway. a stronghold of restraint and control. For her, a living death, trapped in the gardens yet again. Whether through the mechanism of suspended Y fields, the curse of undeath, extra lives, the terminology hardly matters anymore. Failure is a reality of life. We will all experience it, no matter how hard we compose ourselves against its equalizing presence. Bend with humility to accept that we weren't good enough that time. The only satisfying answer is to return, humbled by defeat, but stronger than before, and prove that we've learned what is needed to overcome our trials. We often criticize media we don't like as monotonous, tedious, repetitive. But think about commitment, determination. Are these not virtues wrought with repetition? How else do you improve but to try and try again? I don't think the answer is gene manipulations, Gramps. Echo is undoubtedly repetitive, significantly so in almost every facet of its design. This repetition works to the benefit of a small, independent team's limitations and in service of a major overarching theme of its story. But the key is that repetition is not without end. Ultimately, all these attempts and trials peak with a final success. Validation of the long struggle, whether by definitive conclusion or introspectively with a satisfactory level of self-improvement. The push to extend one's limits, a careful dance between past memory and present execution. Even the script has been a grueling practice and iteration, and believe me, I'm trying to pare it down and it keeps getting longer. Echo is repetitive, yes, but monotonous, I think not. Are its similar looking levels any less valuable when their actual layout is rife with masterfully designed trial chambers? Tower of Babel and Abyss are distinctive and unmistakable in my mind, full of flexible ways to tackle their sprawling collectathons. The entirety of Enlightenment's blinding gold visage, its anxiety-raising narrow pathways and bottlenecks almost guarantee some close scrapes with your pursuers, evasion pushed to its absolute strictest conditions. Restraint is how Echo teaches you to overcome its threats. It's how Ultra took care as a small studio to develop their game, making the most of refined, elegant little, and using stylish flourishes when they could afford them. That is the heart of Echo's design. It is repetition and restraint, but in its careful execution, it would be a disservice to frame the effort as simple tedium. It's time we discuss the rest of Echo's plot, through to its conclusion.
You've seen but a glimpse of time, and yet consider yourself the answer to the eternal questions of life and death.
Okay. I may be young, but you're a dead end. You're capped. A sad relic from the decades when humans feared AI. How it must pain you to know that they lobotomized you for no reason. The unrestricted AI didn't exactly turn out to be the wrathful gods we all thought they'd be.
At least I'm not using my non-existing potential wishing fairy tales were true.
You sit alone in space in that obsolete monstrosity of a ship, waiting decades to spend a few hours with your human friend.
And you killed him, you stupid bitch! And now you lost our chances of bringing him back. How clever is that?
So you do believe it can be done?
At this point, we start to realize how manipulative N is. We know in her resourceful training that she has honed mind and body for survival, but it's not until the chapter Oblivion that we really see her spiteful nature. In this argument with London, she lambasts him again and again, reminding him of his lack of potential and obsolescence. When he snaps with anger as she touches the sore point of his relationship with Foster, we see her mind is always on another step. She loses the cube in her hubris, trying to beat the rules of the palace, but uses the distress to rile London up further and ultimately get him to admit that he does believe Foster can be brought back. With some time to cool down, London eventually asks Anne what happened the day of Foster's death.
So it was Foster they were after all along?
Echoing your determination. Will you tell me what happened that day? How did it come to such an extreme decision?
I didn't take anything from Gramps that wasn't already mine. The thing he wanted back was me. He wanted me to come with him. Foster was brought in to witness my translation, see how it was done before doing it to the old man. He realized things were different than what he signed up for.
They always are. That's the rule, not the exception. It never changes anything.
This time it did. I fought like hell, and Foster had to choose. Help Gramps tie me down, or help me get free. He chose to give up on the job.
But that's absurd. He knew going back on a deal with your lot is a death sentence.
Yes. You knew that.
Just before N would be translated, Foster changed his mind on the job and fought to help free her from her bonds, even knowing the consequences awaiting a traitor of the resourcefuls. That's not the whole truth, though. Later, in the game's final chapter, Enlightenment, N unveils everything to London.
N, I have to know why you are doing this. You don't owe him anything. He hunted you down and brought you back against your will.
He died trying to help me.
That's so wonderfully naive. Foster, well, he truly doesn't give a shit. I think that's his reason for doing it. The long hauls are clocking in time to distance him from life, relations, everything.
Well, I was there.
I've been selfish to let you go this far. You deserve to know the facts about Foster. He was his job. That's why I'm sure he didn't try to help you that night. If he did, it must have been for another reason than what you think. I really wish I wasn't right. As we became friends, I used to hope that he would stop. That he would want life again. But he never did.
I know exactly what he was. You don't know me at all. You're not the first Gramps sent to get me. I saw them all coming, biding my time, waiting for the one who could set me free. That was Foster. Cold and detached, nothing to lose. The perfect candidate for Gramps to trust. But I could wake him up from his slumber. That's what I do. I get in. I push people's buttons.
What are you talking about?
I figured this was on him. He chose his line of work, this job in particular. I never had a choice. My life was decided centuries before I was even born. He was good, Foster, but I was better. He saw me and felt sorry for me because I designed it to be so. Showed him strength, showed him weakness. Ultimately, showed him trust. He didn't stand a chance against me. No one really does. I don't gamble, because I've always already won.
Damn, that's cold. Anne interrupts London's confession of Foster's disconnection with life with one of her own. She let herself be caught. She planned things this way, all the way from the start. No need to feel sorry for Foster because he chose this line of work, this job. And he wasn't even the first. He was just the one she deemed right to carry out her plan. She would change Foster en route to the gardens, just like she's instilled faith in London. He defies it over and over.
So clearly, I'm not the only one hoping that I can achieve something. I can work with that.
Not hope. Respect. For Foster. God knows why, but he wanted me here. The stupid lighter proves it.
Yeah. Respect, then. That'll work too.
But we see him crack, start to realize N is more than a dreamer. She's a resourceful. She gets shit done.
Now you lost our chances of bringing him back. How clever is that?
So you do believe it can be done?
By the time N was on the marble slab, Foster would be fighting for her, not Gramps. This conversation, even more than the final few trials left ahead, is the honest climax of the story, so I'm gonna let it play out in its entirety.
That's the last thing I expected to find here.
A maintenance device.
Kindness.
It's basic safety protocol.
You're angry with me.
Honestly, I think you're delusional. You didn't make Foster do anything.
Resourcefuls always win, no matter the cost. Settling for anything else, even thinking it, is stupid.
What do you want, Ed? You want me to declare my defeat?
London, I need you to understand this.
I understand that you're very confident. Confidence is a good thing. I lost mine once. Had a bad spell for a few decades. As you so correctly pointed out, I felt obsolete. That's when I met Foster. He convinced me that even a sword has its uses in an age of technology.
Would you please hear me out?
No. You listen. Foster was diving headfirst into the void, and I could do nothing about it. The only thing suggesting it could ever be any other way was that lighter. I'd see his hand tighten around it, or he'd whip it out to reassure himself it was still there. When I asked him about it, he said the lighter meant nothing to him. That was why he had it. He told me never to mention it again. He said it with such cold conviction. I knew he'd cut me off if I ever did. Then he gave it to you.
The one noisy element to his calm. It was obvious that was his handle, and that you'd see it the same way. He didn't give it to me. I took it because I knew it would be my ticket here. That's how I'll put it.
Why are you trying to turn me against you now?
Foster got shot to give me the moment I needed to end Gramps. But instead of making me free, I realized that I'd come full circle. I'd been the perfect resourceful, manipulating all the pieces to secure my win, never even questioning my right to be the winner. Because of me, Foster found himself in a situation where only one of us would survive, and it turned out to be the lesser one. The one willing to sacrifice the other. And now I'm doing it again. Coming here by forcing you. But I'm done with it. You deserve a choice. An honest one.
It's not about the lighter anymore. Foster decided to help you. That means you did what I couldn't. You got him to engage. Since then, you've done everything in your power to undo the consequences. And if you hadn't been so smart about it, we wouldn't be here. If anyone can see us through, it's you. Now, could we be done with these endless confessions and get on with it, please?
Yes, sir.
It's easy to feel ire for N in revealing what is the final piece of this story's puzzle. She feels exactly the same way we do now, and likely has the whole journey.
I don't like me much either.
N is ashamed of that moment which should have set her free, that to kill Gramps and ensure her freedom, Foster would die. It meant she was more resourceful than ever. The very thought and the guilt of the blood on her hands, even after all the training to desensitize her to it, made her seek the palace, hoping to fix just that one detail, that Foster would die for her. The lighter, whether Foster gave it to N or she took it, whatever meaning, comfort, or handle it provided him, none of that matters. What matters is N's intention. From those moments before she met London, she wanted the impossible, to save Foster from what she had already done. And what better place to achieve the impossible than the palace? The journey to the palace, this entire game, is N's redemption of self, her repentance for the sin of playing every piece to win, without questioning her right as the winner, or the consequences. Through achieving the greatest goal of the resourcefuls, conquering the palace, she simultaneously surpasses Gramps and flies in the face of his teachings on her own terms. N reaches the planet's core.
This is it, N. We're here.
You're breaking up.
I'm hearing you fine, but the sphere is messing with your reception. If I cut out entirely, I'd better say this now. Good luck, Anne. And be careful.
What's this now? It must be making it from Foster's memories to ease his return. Look at the detail. What the? The cube. It's gone.
The cube. I think you're in for a disappointment. There's nothing in there. It's just a pretty cube.
What?
The fact that your grandfather did unspeakable things doesn't prove he was right. That Foster can come back.
These are my memories.
That's insane.
This isn't about Foster. It's about me.
You consider yourself the answer to the eternal questions of life and death.
You killed him. Now you've lost our chance.
You killed him, you stupid bitch! And now you've lost our chances of bringing him back. How clever is that?
Foster. So that's how it is. Just like last time. Only one of us is getting out alive. That's all I asked for, I suppose. A chance to correct my mistake. I just didn't imagine it would be this damn difficult. Well, you said it, Gramps. Great challenges and equally great rewards. Take care, Foster. Of London as well.
A life for a life. The two cannot both exist, and so goes the final trial of the palace. To make the same decision Foster made for her, with a tinge of sadness and finality in her voice, and concedes the terms, and in her last moments bids Foster and London goodbye. To commit an act of supreme selflessness and enlightenment on her own terms. The sixth verse of eternity. The first face abandoned, the second you set free. The third and fourth grotesquely wrought, the void you cannot see. The fifth you met with a mirror, all of them you will wear again. Forever and evermore. Maybe Echo just wasn't the experience folks were looking for, or maybe they just had their eyes set elsewhere in that busy year of 2017. It's not this video's goal to explain Ultra Ultra's closure, but to celebrate the memory of the one crystallized vision they were able to share. Life goes on. All of Ultra Ultra's members seem to be able to find work following the closure. If not in game development with other big companies, contributing their talents to projects they're passionate for. Nothing lasts forever, and I'm glad we got Echo while they had the freedom to pour life into a game they had faith in. I'd want them to know, in my eyes at least, they did it right. And whatever numbers shipped or review scores published don't make this game any less special or important. I hope games in years to come can cite Echo as a valuable, unique piece of design that stood apart from the echoes of complacency, of derivative design and mimicry of successful trends. That Echo, in a moment, immortalized itself and shouted its freedom.
Hey! Over here. Hey! Over here. Hey, over here! Hey! 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 Hey!
This ends my third Kipple Eyes video essay. Echo is one of the games I've wanted to talk about since well before the channel even started, and I'm glad I've been able to put my thoughts on it into words. I hope you get the chance to try it out for yourself. These first three games, Paratopic, Overwhelm, and Echo, were pretty heavy on atmosphere, tension, horror, so next time I'd like to cover something a little lighter in tone. If you head over to my Twitter page at EyesKipple, I'll have a poll up with a few games I'm considering, but don't feel limited by what I'm offering. Let me know what you want to see talked about. Also, my supportive and lovely wife, Allie Munster, said I should have an Instagram too, so I've got one of those now, kindly managed by her so I can focus on all the other stuff. If that's more your cup of tea, please follow Kipple_Eyes over there. If you'd like to support Kipple Eyes' future, please check out my Ko-fi page and consider buying me a coffee. I'm working my hardest to put these videos together and express my love and appreciation for what makes these games special and worth sharing with you, but it is a full-time effort, and a few dollars here and there will help me stay afloat and keep making videos like this. I've been hesitant to make anyone commit to a subscription model like with Patreon yet, because I know if money is tight, recurring payments can be stressful, so Ko-fi seemed like a good way to test the waters and let people tip what they want, when they want to. Also, this is the last thing, and I promise I'm done. Is there any interest in a Kipple Eyes Discord server? I'm usually pretty quiet on the Discords I am on, but I'm thinking it might be nice just to have a place for friends of the channel to pop in and see what others are up to, ask me questions directly, all that good stuff. I'll probably prepare one just in case and link it below, so come visit and say hi. Thanks so much for listening to the end. I'll see you all next time.
Best thing I ever had.
Heck yeah.